Welcome to Love and Money Secrets TV. We are live here on a day that, believe it or not, it ends in Y. And I'm so happy and excited because I have my beautiful friend and gem, Annie Caterall, the author, the #1 bestseller in her category for the book named The 8 Things No Doctor Told Me. And Annie is live from Australia, from the beautiful uh, area of Melbourne, Australia. Annie, thank you so much for being on our broadcast tonight.
Oh, Lillian, thanks so much for having me. It feels surreal actually because we had you on our show and you were the guest, and so for me to be the guest, it feels a little bit different being on the other side of the bench. But thanks so much for having me on.
It is. Well, when you first told me that you had written this book, I told you, oh my gosh, I want to get a copy of your book. Please send me a link. And then you're like, I'll send you the electronic copy. Coffee. You see, you guys, perfection's not required. I meant to say copy. And you immediately sent me the link, and I purchased the book because I wanted to support you. And I devoured the book. I could not put it down in all honesty. And I'm not just saying that because Annie does, she happens to be on my team. She's one of the incredible practitioners that we have. She has a truly glorious team in not just Australia, but also in the US and in Europe. And so I'm not just saying it because she's on my team, but I picked up the book, and it is a page turner where as you read it, it was an easy read that was very intriguing. I was very magnetized about her story and how the things developed and how it unfolded. And I love how in your first chapter, Annie, I'm getting the chills just mentioning this right now, because you start off with telling people, letting them know you're not broken.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate about why you started off the first chapter with "You're not broken"?
Great question, Lillian. So because I worked in the medical profession, I was a nurse. Um, it was commonplace to hear that whatever we had was, I've got these genes, and so everything was a permanent outcome, basically. So it's like, oh, if my parents had X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to get X, Y, and Z, and people would be resigned to that. And in the last 8 years or so of working on healing my body and listening to it more so than healing it, is actually just honoring it by what it's telling me, because symptoms, that's what they are. I realized that actually environment, so genetics loads the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. So and nothing is permanent. So I wanted to start off with a message of hope, because I know that people who have the conditions that I had are in a dire, they're very sad and things look very bleak for them, and so they don't have much hope. And so I wanted to say that they weren't broken, one, to break the programming that they were, and two, to give them hope, and to, draw them in as to why they aren't. So yeah, that was why I went with "You're not broken."
So, oh my gosh. So as soon as you said environment loads the gun, and what pulls the trigger?
No, so genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. Yeah.
Genetics loads the gun. Hey, you guys, anybody who is watching here live, or if you're watching the replay, you need to write this down. Genetics loads the gun, and environment
Pulls the
pulls
trigger.
the trigger.
Yeah.
So I would be, anybody in my seat right now would be crazy not to ask you, why do you say that? And please, would you clarify why you say that?
Great question. All right. So I'm living proof that you can't heal in the environment that made you sick.
True.
So with that, and I talk about it in my book, the things that that doctors aren't even aware of. It's not even on their radar. And one being our relationship with our devices. and our relationship to light. There's this whole emphasis on diet. We don't eat 24/7, but we are exposed to a degree of light and technology 24/7. So I would argue that all clinical studies, all research that's been conducted needs to be done again, but in natural environment, not under fluorescent lighting or anything like that, because we are highly sensitive. Despite what doctors would tell us, we really are just plants with complex emotions, because so much of our body's processes are signaled by sunlight.
Yeah, we actually
and interfered with by artificial light.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
so definitely do experience photosynthesis, even though we're not taught that in school, and doctors don't use that language amongst themselves and with each other. But yeah, and I love the fact that in the book you talked about you becoming your own health detective. And it's funny because, you know, if you think about it, it's like, you know, we know about Newton's third law. You know, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So there's certain Newtonian laws and physics that we all have been taught. And we're even told that there's even space within rocks, even though with a naked eye, you can't see it, right? And that even rocks have a certain vibrational frequency to it. And yet with the same breath, so many MDs, centralized medicine doctors, are quick to say, oh, if you have this, it's permanent. And wait a minute, if there's an action for every action has an equal and opposite reaction, by definition, that means that energy is in motion and that nothing is permanent.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, there's a disconnect in that practitioner's mind, because they've been fed something and they didn't question it, and they haven't done the deeper. And some of them do make the mental leap of questioning it. And we have several mentors that we share together who actually have said, wait a minute, I didn't learn this. Not only did I not learn this in pre-med, but I did not learn this in medical school. And what good did it do me to be a summa cum laude, be at the top of my graduating class, when there's all these holes in education that didn't come into fruition until, as in for you, as in for me, and in some of our mentors, it wasn't until much later that they started to connect, you started to connect, I started to connect the dots, truly out of necessity. In your case, because of the diagnosis that you had of POTS and dysautonomia.
Yes. So what I've come to understand, and it's clear as day to me now, is that doctors are taught that things can be manipulated in the body biochemically. So that's where the pharmaceuticals come in. So we give you a chemical and we create this chain reaction, and it will block your symptoms. It doesn't change anything, but it blocks, you know, a process that your body is clearly screaming for help for. But so when they say that, you know, there's nothing that will change your genetics, it's clearly, I think, purely because they haven't found a chemical chain reaction to affect those genes and those signals, which are actually engaged by light. So they're not going to find any, are they?
No, because they're not even looking for them, really.
No.
And they're not looking also for root causes, which one of the things that I know you've become aware of, and I've become abundantly aware of, that many physicians, many doctors, many nurses, many people who enter the realm of health and wellness, oftentimes were motivated because of something that we need to repair in ourselves, or in a parent or a sibling or a child. So that's a great degree of motivation when you're like, you know what, I'm still not finding the answers in traditional centralized medical modalities. So then you start to seek alternative, you know, organic, holistic, non-traditional methods. And then that's when you come across some of this information, which has made all the difference in the world for you.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, in chapter 2, you talk a lot about your hydration solution. Do you want to go into, during this interview, do you want to talk a little bit about your POTS and your dysautonomia? Yes. Because I think it's a very, I'm surprised when I hear of MDs who are like, POTS, they're like, what's POTS? And I'm like, seriously? And we're in 2025 and you haven't heard of POTS? I'm like, okay, with all due respect, but okay. Would you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so I wasn't diagnosed for a long time. So it was 8 years without, well, just being told that it was in my head that, I was just anxious, that, I was conjuring up these symptoms, which wasn't pleasant. But I did doctor hop. So I did exhaust doctors to get a different perspective. And interestingly, it wasn't the doctors who had 30, 40 years of practice experience who understood. It was the ones who were fresh out the classroom, within the last decade. One lady in particular who I went and saw, who examined me differently and just took my heart rate sitting and standing. And there was a difference. There was a significant difference. And so she said, "Oh, I think you have POTS," and proceeded to refer me to an electrocardiologist. So POTS it stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which basically means that your heart rate and blood pressure alter when you change position. So and it's a syndrome. So they don't know what causes it, but they have a nice little cluster of symptoms, and that's the umbrella term they give it. But I was initially, I was after she had that preliminary diagnosis, then I was diagnosed officially with neurocardiogenic syncope after a tilt table test. So that's where, they strap you to a bench, they give you something to strain your heart, and then they tilt the table up and then back down. And my blood pressure bottomed out. And so they had a positive outcome. They would call it a positive diagnosis for that test. And that was what I was diagnosed with. But it's basically the same, one and the same.
One is they're both descriptors of the symptoms that you're having, because postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Postural means that based on the posture, sitting, standing, laying down. Orthostatic, that has to do with how orthotically you are standing or sitting or laying down. And then tachycardia is the speed. Tachycardia is a fast as opposed to bradycardia, which is a slow. So if you go from sitting and you stand, all of a sudden your heart gets stuck idling high because it's stressed, right? And it's because of a postural change, which the second thing that you mentioned, what was the second one that you mentioned?
Neurocardiogenic syncope. So neurocardiogenic and then syncope, which is basically fainting.
The heartbeats. Yeah. So it's a descriptor also of basically the same thing. So they're basically the same diagnosis. So I just want people to start to understand also and see the correlation here that, you can have the same group of symptoms and you can have 3, 4, 5 different diagnoses, which are really all the same thing. So that's why when we're dealing with people, we're not attached to any of the diagnoses. We're more paying closer attention to what you're describing to us in terms of what your symptoms are. And you were really brilliant at explaining those, because a lot of people are relating with what you wrote, your experience has been, and how you've come through on the other side.
Yeah. So I have, and the reason why I wrote the book wasn't, I had about 12 months ago, I was like, oh yeah, I should write my book. But then as we turned into 2025, people just came to me and like, oh my gosh, Annie, I was speaking to this person and they've just been diagnosed with POTS, or I was telling them your story and they think that they might have POTS. And so it was like 50% of the conversations I was having. And I'm like, I really need to have my story in paper so that people can find it without having to find me. Because I was just I could just see it, the increase in people coming down with it, skyrocketing. And I'm like, I've only got so many hours in the day. I need to have something where people can find it and share it without having to have a one-on-one with me. So that was really why I wrote it.
So that's a great reason, because now, it's unlimited the number of people who can get a hold of your book. There's only one of you. You only have 24 hours in the day. You can do group calls. You can be on a stage with 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, but a book can reach millions. And that is very, very powerful, so that people can actually have a foundation and have some sort of guideline, and at least take a baby step in the direction of being able to improve their health. So let's talk about the electrostatic aspect of it, because the heart is the most the most powerful electromagnetic organ that we have in the body. It's 10,000 times more. There's more electricity that goes through your heart than goes through your brain.
Yep.
And you also talked about how or how it dovetails with the quality of water, because water is a great conductor of electricity.
Yeah.
So you,
Yeah.
I know you talked about filtered structured water. So would you like to elaborate a little bit on that now?
Well, yeah. So when I was diagnosed in 2018, then the solutions that they presented me was to drink 3 to 4 liters of water a day. And I would, but with that, I found that I got weaker and weaker. And then they said to salt load, but of course they were pushing, highly processed snacks. They were like, "Yep, have free reign, have whatever you want." And I didn't feel any better for doing that. And it's just really been since using the patches that I put two and two together and realized, okay, no, actually drinking that amount of water without having a replenishment of all these minerals and electrolytes, we're actually just flushing and depleting our bodies more. And in order to repair, our bodies require all the other electrolytes for all the other, electronic exchange and cellular metabolism and all that sort of stuff. So I did, but I mean, also in nursing, I was already telling my patients, even on fluid restrictions, that they needed to be drinking more water, because I could see that the reason why they had fluid retention was because they weren't drinking enough. And so their body was automatically hanging on to fluid because it needed it. So it's like, if you just drink a little bit more water, then you'll flush it, and then you're communicating to your body. It's like when people starve themselves to lose weight. You don't actually lose weight, you gain it, because your body's like, well, we don't know when you're going to feed us next, so we're going to just store a hump for later. So so that was what I'd witnessed, and that was just counterintuitive, the medical advice that my patients were getting by their doctors. And I'm like, no, another glass of water won't kill you. And a lot of them would come back to me with, I only bathe in it. And so I'm like, well, then there's this whole conversation and relationship around water, when if you're not filtering it, I wouldn't drink it either. It tastes pretty rubbish. So so that was kind of why I did think that hydration was really important. Not just oral, but then obviously hydrating smarter, not harder. So not drinking copious amounts of water, as opposed to, Celtic salts, and just drinking, 1.5, 2 liters a day, you'll be fine, And then also obviously IV hydration, which I did weekly up until a few months ago, which was just added support, really. And so, it really is a huge, simple factor to managing fatigue, brain fog, and even maintaining a homeostasis in your blood pressure.
Yeah, the balance in your blood pressure. Yeah, in your book you talked, and I thought it was brilliant that you pointed out to people that water is not just a hydration mechanism, but it's information, it's communication, and it's intelligence. So I really would love for you to elaborate on that. And you guys, really to sink your teeth and really get a juicy mouthful of educational information that's going to really impact and improve your lives, you got to get the book. I'm going to encourage people to not just get the electronic version of the book, but also get the paperback version of the book. You want to, and I always look at things from a brain perspective, because I repattern the brain from physical and emotional trauma. And so the benefit that you will get from having the electronic copy, highlighting it, making your notes, and then having the physical copy that you can tangibly feel with your fingers, that you can see with your eyes, you will retain more. And then as you take notes, you physically highlight it, it will engrave it in the left and the right hemisphere of your brain. And as you start to take notes, it will start to integrate, and you'll be able to apply and remember and recall the information so that you can make use of it more quickly.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
I
mean, I didn't write it. It's not my autobiography. I do share about my story so that it's relatable to the reader, so that they can see themselves in my shoes, or rather, see how what I write about can provide solutions for them. But it's not that thick, and the font itself is not very small. So it's a really easy read, because I know that people who are chronically tired don't that taking in information can be overwhelming, and it's so vital information. So I just made it really simple for people.
Yeah, it's a very consumable book. And for those of you who are non-readers, but who are determined to get well, I'm going to encourage you to take the physical copy of the book and put it in the bathroom. And every time you go to the bathroom, read one page. That's it. Before you know it, you will have read the book. You'll probably stay on the can a little longer than normal, because you're going to go, I have to finish the first chapter. I'm going to read. Maybe you're like, I'm not a reader and I normally can't read more than a page, and you will find yourself finishing the first chapter, and you'll get through the book much quicker, and you're going to want to read it again. But I want to bring our audience back to what you said about how water is information, communication, and intelligence. I know that you and I, in the past, actually, when we first met and we first started talking a couple of years back, we talked about Dr. Imarasu Emoto, and we talked
Yes.
about the intelligence in water. So can you elaborate about the fact that water is information, communication? And
Well, yeah, it dovetails with a later chapter about how our cells are listening. And Dr. Emoto conducted studies about what the well-being of, like, bowls of rice, or he'd freeze water after speaking certain phrases to each one, and what that showed. And so I know that, especially people who are chronically ill, we're very self-critical, and very negative about ourselves. Our self-talk is, if we heard someone else speak about us the way we speak about ourselves, that's well, there would be carnage, I'm sure. But so he studied bowls of rice, and one bowl of rice he spoke love over, the other bowl of rice he spoke hatred and cursed, and the third bowl of rice he completely ignored. And so of the three, the one that deteriorated the first, or the quickest, was the bowl that was ignored. And so I apply that principle. It's like, so that's what, when we ignore our needs, then we're going to deteriorate really quickly, as opposed to if we acknowledge it. If we're giving something attention, be it positive or negative, it still responds, because it's getting attention. It's like an infant. They require attention, otherwise they die. This is what happens. We require attention. We're born for connection. And so I haven't read Manasaro's books yet, Dr. Masaro's books yet, but I listened to a lot of Veda Austin, who is in New Zealand, and she has been conducting her own studies of water, and how there was one particular petri dish she did, where she froze an image of a seed, or she put water over a seed and took that snapshot and put it in the freezer, and then came out and was expecting to see an outline of the seed, where actually she saw the flower in full bloom. And so water sees our highest potential. And when I heard that, I thought that was highly profound, and that we really need to be wise about what we speak over ourselves, as
Absolutely.
well as providing our body with the right kind of materials to repair. And so if you drink filtered water as opposed to tap water, then it's already gone through a process of love and care, as opposed to just from the municipal council, where they add chemicals. So,
Yeah.
and
Also,
how that actually affects our cellular, our 3D printing in this meat suit here, how we appear in this reality. Yeah.
absolutely. And also, you mentioned also about how the quality of the water, so many people microwave water for their coffee, for their tea, for whatever. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's dead water. It's so harmful for the body. Can you
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit about that? Because both Emoto as well as Veda Asen also talk about that.
Well, I'll just say that when you look at the glass dish that's in a microwave, if you hold it up, it actually has that radioactive hazard that's on the plate. That's what those little glass things form the shape of in the divots to hold it in place. It's actually radioactive. And so what it does is it excites the water particulates in food, in water, whatever, and completely strips them while radiating them, strips them of nutrients while radiating them. So yeah, so I don't use a microwave except to heat wheat bags for when I'm a bit achy or crampy or whatever. I won't use a microwave for food ever, or water, never ever. And we're going into spring here, so my father is planting seedlings to grow in our garden, and he's been keeping them on the same bench that we keep our microwave in the garage. It does not live in the house. Anyway, so he's had the seedlings there by the microwave, and not many of them, it's not been used, but it's been plugged in, and not many of them have germinated, as opposed to if he'd put it in a greenhouse in the outside. And some of them have actually died. So when I used it, I would make sure to move the seedlings away, because I've seen the radiation effects of high frequencies have on plants and things like that. And then it's going to affect the fruit that it produces as well. So
Of course, of course. So also, I know that since we're talking about water and we do talk about using salt and the quality of salt, one of the things that you brought to our attention, which I did not know, and I was like, but it made sense. But you mentioned the fact, okay, first of all, you have to have good quality water, and you are going to want to use a certain type of salt, good quality salt, and iodized, refined salt. You talked about how it causes micro tears at a cellular level. And
yeah.
I was horrified. I'm like, how is it possible that I didn't know that? And I thought, oh my gosh, everybody needs to know that if you use ordinary garbage salt that's very commercially available pretty much in any country, that comes in a little blue, at least in the States, it comes in a little blue canister with a little girl and an umbrella. You know, that refined iodized salt, that's what the doctors tell you. If you have high blood pressure, don't take that. Can
Yeah.
you elaborate on that and about the micro tears?
Yeah, I was shocked when I learnt that as well. It was my nurse mentor who I've reconnected with. So she taught me in nursing school. She was her name's Kerry Gleason. She taught me critical care, and she was from the get-go very vocal in questioning what doctors told us, because really at the end of the day, in practice as nurses, we were the ones who would wind up with our butts in court if a patient died, not the doctor. Anyway, so Kerry has done lots of research in her own right, and so I'm like a sponge whenever I'm around her. And I learned through her that table salt causes micro tears, and it made a lot of sense when, you know, cardiologists and things, when someone's had a heart attack, they say take a low sodium diet, because it's so high, it's highly processed. I can see how they act like little glass shards, and and you can tell by putting it on your tongue, it takes forever for it to dissolve.
Yeah.
And as soon as you put anything on your tongue, it shows up in your circulation system in less than 30 seconds, because our mouth and our tongue is highly vascularized. So that's why that's why iodized table salt is so dangerous. But also it's devoid of the other minerals. So, you know, taking a low sodium diet is not the answer. It's just take the right type of salt, you know, and you don't need as much, and you don't need to drink as much water either, because taking a pinch of Celtic salt on your tongue tricks your cells into pulling water into circulation, and so then you're not depleting your body of minerals when you when you chug a liter of water.
Yeah, it's the electrolyte effect of the good quality Celtic salt, and the electrolytes and the micronutrients that are inherently in there that are not in the refined iodized table salt.
Yeah.
that is devoid of all of that. So yeah, it's really quite fascinating. Let's shift gears, and you mentioned it at the beginning, and I don't know if people caught it, but you talked about how we as humans, how we're plants. And in the book, you talk about how we're plants with emotions.
Mm. Yeah. So, and I have really, like, I mean, again, since using the patches, I've become, uh, I've been drawn more into circadian biology and quantum biology, which analyzes our impact with light and how we're affected by that. And so that's why I'm wearing these glasses. I don't have trouble seeing. These are daylight blue light blockers. So I whenever I'm on a screen, I'm using these to block, the high intensity blue light that I get exposed to when I'm working from home on my screen. So, and probably since the beginning of 2025, or at least it was over Christmas last year, that my family and we started getting up at sunrise and grounding and getting enough sunshine. And so I found in that process that I had more energy, I was more alert. And then when the sun went down, I was ready for bed, and I was sleeping so much better. So yeah, so I actually, and I have books that I'm slowly studying and reading, but I follow Dr. Jack Bruce, and he is probably the foremost authority figure on this topic. So I had to draw the attention, because when I was chronically ill, when I had no energy, I'd lie there in bed all hours, day or night, and scroll on my phone, and
Not knowing that that was
didn't
harming.
realize the impact. I'd be in a dark room and have my brightness all the way out and just scroll for hours, and didn't realize that that was impacting my health.
Perpetuating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, you'll see I'm wearing this black snood around my neck. It's
Mhm.
actually aligned, which protects my thyroid, because the thyroid is the gland that absorbs radiation. And so when we sit there on our phone scrolling, where is it hitting? It's hitting directly at our thyroid. So it's these little things that I use to mitigate exposure and protect myself.
I love that. So, and I love also that in your book, you have a series of bullet points where you talk about EMFs, you talk about the different symptoms that people get from blue light toxicity and from these different devices and so forth. You go on very thoroughly explaining to people and revealing to them some of the culprits that we don't have, the average person has no idea that their light environment has anything to do with why they're feeling so bad.
Yeah.
And some people, they have a little dysregulation, but for some people, they have serious dysregulation in 2, 3, 4 different systems of the body, which compounds and magnifies everything to a much greater degree.
Yeah. Well, I was, and that became really, it really hit home when I was working at my local pizza place a few years ago for some extra money. And there were a lot of kids who worked there, late teens, early 20s. And one of them in particular was always tired. And because I I was a nurse, and I was always offering, support and suggestions for people's health, he would ask me a lot, oh, what should I do about this, and what should I do about that? And when I learnt that he would be up until 4 a.m. playing video games, I'm like, maybe you can't sleep because you're playing the video games. Maybe just, if you really are going to get some blue light blockers, so that you're not on a screen until 4 a.m. Maybe do that. But he hasn't. But it became blatantly apparent that the youth of today just don't understand, and they overuse and abuse their technology. So, and wonder why they feel like rubbish.
Well, and the thing is that we have parents who are unaware. They just have no idea the detrimental effects of these devices, and they're giving toddlers that are still in strollers, 3, 4 years old, and you see them either with an iPhone or an Android, or they have a tablet, an iPad, and they're playing for hours a day. And they're wondering why these kids have these emotional outbursts, why they're not sleeping through the night, all these all these behavioral changes that they're like, well, wait a minute, when I was growing up, they're like, I don't remember my brothers and sisters behaving like this. Why are my kids acting like this? And the culprit could be as simple as, too much electronic device exposure. And it's not what they think. They don't realize that it's the blue light as well as the electromagnetic frequencies that are coming from desktops, laptops, iPads, notepads, cell phones, not to mention LED lights, fluorescent lights, and halogen lights. It is very, very pervasive. And then I don't see too many kids. Sometimes in certain areas, we do see more children running around with, the electronic watches. I don't want to throw any brand under the bus here, but
oh yeah, they're all just as bad.
yeah, and people don't realize it's like, yeah, you have I happen to have patches on my pericardium 6 acupuncture point, but guess what? When you wear any of those electronic watches, it's right over that pulse point, and your wrist, even if you're a big guy, it's still a relatively thin.
That area is actually, if you look at anatomical drawings of what they've studied of that area, there's actually a lot of, it's like fiber optic cable. There's a lot of cartilage, there's a lot of nerve ending, there's a lot that's happening in this area of your wrist here. And I remember because I did have a smartwatch that I wore because I was still trying to get answers. I developed an arrhythmia as well over the course of my illness. And so I would wear a watch, but I would actually have a rash that come out, and then over time my wrist would start to ache and my hand would get really weak and I'd lose grip strength in that hand. And so once I'd kind of wrapped up, I'm like, I've got the information I need. I don't need it anymore. I sold it on, and I go back to wearing an analog watch now, which is far nicer. But yeah, because I literally came out with a rash on my skin right underneath where those lights protrude into your skin.
And we know that anytime you have any kind of skin eruption, any kind of dermatitis, doesn't matter what the label your dermatologist or your GP is giving you, that is the body's effort to detox you from toxins that are in the body. Any type of toxin. It doesn't matter if it's a synthetic or organic toxin, something you inhaled, ate, absorbed, doesn't matter what the source is. It's trying to get out because it can't stay inside your body. It's bad for your body. So it's trying to get out. So let's roll back the hands of time a few years back when you had just received the patches, and it was your birthday wake-up call, basically. You had a very high pulse rate. Your heart was like literally like snare drums. You were going at about 150 or 155 beats a minute. You had a very interesting experience that you shared. I remember back when we first started you on the patches, and then you also talk about it in your book. You want to share with our listeners about that day, because I think that was a cornerstone. That's the day that everything changed for you.
It was. So Jody, my business partner and the one who you introduced the patches to first, she's instrumental into why I'm still here on the planet. Thank you, Jody. You both are. And so she was using the patches for the first couple of months before me, and she was like, "Oh, Annie, these are really great." And I saw a couple of clinical studies come through on our other good friends' Telegram channel, and she shared it, and I was like, "Wow, this is next level. If you can use a light to upregulate this, that, and the other." And but I wasn't in the headspace because I was in so much agony. I was begging I was in the process of getting my doctor to send me off to see someone about putting a pacemaker in, because I was 31 at the time, and I know that, life expansion is happening and people are living longer. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to be around, love to have kids. I'd love to have my own family. But if I've got to put up with this for the next 60 years, I'm going to need help, or I'm looking for an exit to stage left. And so that was where my head was at. I was getting on a pension, a disability pension from the government, and which is like Social Security, I think, for you guys. and yeah, and looking at getting a pacemaker inserted because I just had enough. And so Jody was like, Annie, you got to try these patches. They're saving so many lives. Just get on them. She goes, I'm doing it with or without you. And so because because my will to show up for others was then bigger to show than showing up for myself. I went, okay, fine, here's the credit card to, order whatever you think I need. And so I started with the energy enhancers. So I'd woken up that morning, and she's like, happy birthday, what are you going to do? And I said, yeah, I'm going to spend it in bed, I think, because yeah, this is how I feel right now. And it's not crash hot. So she said, have you put on your patches? And I said, no. And she gave me a talking to and sent me a video with Dr. Stacey on where to put them on my wrists. And so I didn't even realize that there was a tan one and a white one or whatever. So I just pulled out 2 white ones, whacked them on. And I'd been up for a couple of hours at that point because I'd had my regular morning chat with Jody and had already taken my heart medication that I was on. And that had been in my system for an hour and a half and hadn't even touched the sides. That made no impact whatsoever to my palpitations and my tachycardia. And anyway, so I put these on and I go out and make a cup of tea. And I'm talking with my mum and it's about 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh, I don't feel like death warmed up anymore. What are these? And so it really did, because I was a skeptic. Before I was like, sure, I'm just going to put on this little Band-Aid and it's going to fix all my problems. Yeah, sure. To then, yeah, within 10 minutes, not. And I proceeded about my day as normal. I got in the shower. I wasn't exhausted, and I had sustained energy for the rest of the day. And it was just those patches, and I just was flabbergasted. And I had my absolute attention from that point, and I haven't stopped since. So.
That's
Yeah.
extraordinary. Yeah. So she literally saved your life. I can't imagine being just so young at 31 and to be begging for a pacemaker because your heart is failing you repeatedly. I can't even begin to imagine what it must have been like to be in your body and to deal with that physically, but also all the psychological and emotional repercussions and how everybody is also responding. They're helpless to help you because their hands are kind of tied. There's nothing that anybody can really do for you. And ultimately it wasn't until you said yes, when Jody said, this can help you, and you were willing to say yes, that everything started to change.
Well, it wasn't only that. It was also because Jody and our podcast we've been experimenting with other things, alternative things to heal ourselves. And I didn't have one more failure left in the tank. I didn't have enough wherewithal to support yet another thing that didn't move the needle.
Didn't work. Yeah. So then that is, when you lose hope, that is got to be the worst feeling in the world, because at that point you just kind of like give up, and it's like, okay, something's got to take you and you just want to go.
Yeah.
And so that brings us to the point, because there is a point in the book towards the latter part of the book, you talk about secondary gains and how you felt you had an identity, which is easy for every one of us to do, to have an identity as being the sick one, but you also have a certain, the way you languaged it was that you have a loyalty to pain.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so interesting that you talked about having a loyalty to pain, because I had someone last year and I was like, they said that pain was their friend. And I was like, when I heard them say that, it was like nails on a chalkboard. I'm like, why would you say pain is your friend?
Yeah.
Pain is not your friend. Your pain is there to curb your behavior. But that person didn't see that in that manner. They're like, no, pain is my friend. And I'm like, don't you want to get rid of that friend then? That's not a friend that's good for you. Do you want to elaborate about the secondary gains and the loyalty to pain that you talked about in your book?
Well, so it wasn't until someone who we had brought on in the patches in Elizabeth had said, Annie, that's really profound, because I was sharing about, coming out of chronic illness for 14 years. And so I had developed certain brain, like trained my brain in certain habits and patterns. And so, and it was just, was because of circumstance. So because of how ill I felt, I just shrank myself more and more and more, removed my, like automatically disqualified myself from doing certain things, catching up with certain people, having relationship with certain people, social engagements, all that sort of stuff, because I didn't have the capacity. I needed days in bed to recover. And so then when Jody was, and we started talking about these patches, and it was around my last hope, I'm like, if this doesn't work, but also I actually identified I had a fear that what if it did? Because then I would have, it's like, okay, I'm better now, and then everyone's going to want more of me. And so it was a deep emotional work, because from the age of 2, I had this experience where I'd concluded that in order to exist or to deserve love and affection, I had to save others. That was something I decided at the age of 2. I
Wow.
choose to know how that happened. So yeah. So in that in my unhealed state, I didn't have a framework, an understanding of boundaries, personal boundaries. It wasn't my job to save anyone, but that was my mode of operandi when I was a nurse and when I was sick. And so it's like, okay, so now I'm going to have to go back to carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders because I feel better. And so there was a fear there that I was like, what happens? And so I did really wrestle with that. But fortunately, because I had the support in the patches to address my physical pain, and then I met my mentor, Robert Tennyson Stevens, who helped me deal with my emotional pain. I'm not that person anymore. so it's not even a thing. But that's something that is, I see it in anyone who has chronic illness.
Yes.
And I actually, when I was a nurse, and I'd offer support to people, and I even had tools that were not mainstream, not allopathic, to help people, and they would turn me down, and I would think, oh, what's that about? Even being in those shoes myself, I was like, why wouldn't you want to do something that would help you? And I realized, sadly, not everyone wants to get better, and leave them. If they say no, then don't want their miracle for them more than they do, because that's only going to be an empty pit, bottomless pit, and you've wasted resources and effort in getting someone somewhere when they don't want that anyway. And it's hard. It's a hard realization to come to. But many people have death wishes. I had a death wish, and I forgave myself from it and chose to stay here and thrive instead, which took courage, but not everyone can do that.
That's true. And that's there, I've told people in the past, when they ask me, oh, will this work for my son, my daughter, my husband, my whatever. And when it's tied to that aspect of free will, I say, listen, there's no patch against a person's free will. Doesn't exist. So you have to respect everybody's free will. And if someone wants to get off the planet, and this is whatever their burden, whatever they're suffering with right now, if they want to have that be the reason for which they're going to exit early, then you have to honor that. You may not want them to leave. I may not want them to leave, but if that's what they want, then you can't stand in the way of their free will.
No.
You really can't. And so for those who are willing to have the courage, like yourself, to say, you know what, I do want to get better, and I don't even know what my identity is or who would I be, because it's been so long that I've had this, not just the pain, but the burden of everything that comes along with the things that you were battling. But you're willing to go, you know what, but I'm willing to reinvent myself and be the best version of myself that I could possibly be. And even though that may seem a little scary, I'm going to go there, and I'm going to take a leap of faith and go in that direction. And now here you are.
Yeah.
I think that's monumental, and that's available. We have free will. So for every person, the person that's looking through this camera, looking at Annie, looking at me right now, listening with both of your ears, watching with both of your eyes, feeling whatever you're feeling in your skin right now, this is possible for you. You just have to choose it. And the beautiful thing is that Annie has created a tangible map for you that page by page, at the end of all of the chapters, one of the things that I love, I've never seen any other book written this way, but you had bullet points of what helped me most, and then you had the reference or the recommendation of whatever alternative modality that you used in addition to using the patches, which I
Yeah.
think is so incredibly helpful. And so in closing here, I do want to have you back, and I want us to elaborate on different aspects of this book, because I think the number one thing is that this is the best kept secret and more people need to know about it. And there's so many incredible things that you put in this book, and you're living proof that this works. And it's available to those who just, you don't need to know the how. You just need to go, I want to get better, and I think Annie can help me. And that 1% of doubt that maybe you don't have to stay the same way that you have been, and 1% doubt that maybe, yes, you can get better. That's the crack, the light where it can come into your experience, where all you have to go is, hey, Annie, can you hook me up with the information, whatever it is that I need? Tell me, based on this collective group of symptoms, where do you think, what should be my next step? And she would be more than happy to help you, whether it's on a one-on-one or a group Zoom, because I know you do group Zooms, and you have some incredible people that you're connected with on your team. And we've got Dr. Stacy, double PhD. The list goes on and on. So I don't want to over talk that, because it is pretty impressive, the team that we have, and we have superhumans like Annie. But I want people to be able to know, where do they go to get your book? Number one. Number two, most importantly, where do they reach you? What's the best way for them to connect to you?
Oh, great questions, Lillian. Okay, so first off, the book is available on Amazon in all countries. So if you just search The 8 Things No Doctor Told Me, it'll come up. And I'll just reiterate what Lillian said. What I share isn't just for people who have POTS, vaccine injury, or nervous system collapse. They apply to anyone who is dealing with anything chronic, anything health related. There's great takeaways in this book. And there's also, and for the physical copy, I don't know if yours had it, Lillian, but I've actually got QR codes at the end of each chapter with extra resources, because I didn't write this to be anyone's guru. I just wanted to show that I've learned from others. I'm standing on the shoulders of other giants, and this is where you can go and find their information, because I didn't come up with it. So, and then you can follow me. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on Telegram. Our Wellness Superheroes is on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's on Odyssey. It's on Rumble, and also on Facebook. So I'm also on Instagram and on TikTok from time to time. So yeah, you can find me. My handle is My Light Heals.
My Light Heals on TikTok. I want to show everybody here on camera. Let me see if I can hold this up here. So you're going to see her wearing a blue shirt. Her name
that's
is
my scrubs
Annie
top.
Caterall.
That's my scrubs.
Annie Caterall. So you can find her most definitely on Facebook. I want to encourage you to connect with her there. And if you reach out to me on this YouTube channel, she's going to be looking in not just the description, but in the comments below. So we'll make sure that if you ask, hey, how do we get in touch with her? We'll send you the Telegram link so that you can connect to her on Telegram, and we'll give you the Facebook profile link so that you can also connect to her on Facebook as well. I hope you get
I'll give you the links as well for the description, Lillian, if that helps.
Yeah, we'll put the links in the description, and we'll put it in the first comments, and we'll pin it to the top. It's that important to me that you do connect with her, and know that if you feel, because I know, Annie, you felt this way, and I know I felt this way after I got hit by a bus. We do oftentimes feel that in centralized medicine, that those white coats don't care. And it's like, you're just another number, and it's like status quo, and here's your prescriptions, and, less than 15 minutes, and then you're out the door, and whatever tests and so forth. Yeah. I want you guys to be aware and to realize and recognize we do care. We really, really, really care. And if you have made the choice that it's not acceptable for you to stay with whatever it is that you've got, even if they tell you that it's permanent or incurable or unhealable, or there's nothing else that they can do for you. Oh my gosh, if I had $1 for every time we've heard that from people that have come to us, we would be not multi-millionaires. We would be billionaires. Is that not true? We
Yeah.
had so
Yep.
many people who were, the medical community, centralized medicine said, get your affairs in order. You only have either days or a few weeks or a couple months. This is it. This is the end of the road. And guess what? It's now been years, and these people are totally fine.
Mm.
And that could be you. You could be next. You just need to choose it. So reach out to Annie, reach out to me, put your comments below, find the Wellness Superheroes on YouTube. You're going to love the biohacking education that they have on there. It is off the charts, very well packaged. And also you can reach out to her on Facebook. You can see the thousands of people that she's connected with, that she helps around the world, literally. And our number one goal is to get you to feel better.
Yeah.
End of story.
Well, and I
All
don't
right.
know about you, Lillian, but I'm now convinced, especially with these 2 years of being on the patches and what I've seen it do for people, that there is nothing the body can't heal from. No, absolutely nothing. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah, you can regenerate, regrow. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I don't think a single week goes by. Sometimes it's like several days in a row where we're like, oh my gosh, it's like we're still surprised at the results that people have. It's absolutely astonishing. And they're the results of biblical proportion. It really is miraculous.
Mm.
So you're still breathing, you're still alive for a reason.
Yep.
Even if you can't pick up your phone to text Annie or to get on Facebook, you have either a nurse or a loved one that's visiting you, because you might be watching this from a hospital bed in CCU, ICU, or maybe in long-term care. And sometimes when they have you hooked up to IVs, you literally can't pick anything up. Next time a nurse comes in, you could say, would you pick up my phone and look up Annie Caterall on Facebook? And would you send her a friend request? And would you touch the message and say, let me leave a voice message for her? A friend referred her to me. And then leave her a voice message. She will get back to you.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
We are passionate and obsessed with wanting to help you get better. All right.
And if you're drawing breath, there's still hope.
Yeah, you're
As long
drawing
as you're drawing breath, there's still hope.
There's still hope. Parting words, is there anything that you want to close this session with?
Oh no, thank you so much, Lillian, for having me on. It has been an absolute divine connection, us crossing paths in this time and place. And I'm just so thankful for you. And thanks for having me on and sharing my book. Appreciate it.
You're quite welcome. I will continue to do so. And you guys, if you also want to learn about the patches, of course, I'd be remiss. Annie is part of my team. You'll see here that we have the times. This is giving us for the United States. Yeah, she's about 16, 17 hours ahead of us.
In the future.
Yeah, in the future or in the present, however you want to look at that. But we are very dedicated to making sure that you have the information about the patches. Reach out to Annie. I can think of no better person to help you with your health journey. And you will not recognize yourself a year from now, let alone 2 years from now, let alone 3 years from now. And your friends, your family, your acquaintances, they will be in awe to see the incredible turnaround. And you're going to feel so much happier and so much better.
Yeah.
So that's it. From my heart to your
Thanks
heart.
for watching, everyone.
Ciao for now, our friends and gems. Bye-bye now.